All right, I'm taking some special requests today for the assignment that's with Unit 1 through 4 review, I think, circuit training one. So I'm just going to go and hit a couple of different ones that use some different rules, so you have those numbers. I'm not going to do number 1, but number 1 is just if there's a plus sign in the middle, that means I take the derivative there, derivative of there, and then we have to go and plug in to what it says. So if I go and look at number 8, this one's sort of the same idea. It's going to tell me that if I wanted to, I could go and write this. If I wanted to distribute, I totally could. I have multiplication because this does not have an x on it. The only thing I have to do there is take the derivative, because I want to find the derivative of p of 1. So it's going to say at least get the derivative here. So 4 times f prime of x plus 4 times j prime of x. Then up here, it says I don't only want my derivative, but I also want to know, well, what happens when x is 1? So that's going to require me to go to my other sheet. So it asks me for my derivative. So there's my derivative when f is 1. Well, its value would be negative 8. So 4 times negative 8 plus. And then when I go and look at j, okay, on j, this doesn't say that this is my derivative, but if I go and read up here, it says that j consists of 2 linear pieces, which means that I have a slope here and a slope there. All of these points have the same slope, which would mean that that's my derivative value for everything from negative 2 to 8, and from the slope then would be from negative 1 to 2. If it's the endpoint of 2, that'd be undefined, but it's not going to ask me for that. But anyways, since it asked me about j of 1, well, here's 1. All I have to do now is count my slope. So counting my slope is saying, what is that tangent line? So I'm going to go up 1, 2, and then over 1. So my slope there, and it's going to be everything, I'll do this every single time, its slope is going to be positive 2. So on this side, j prime of x is going to equal 2. So if I go back over here and do the same thing. So now I have negative 32 plus 8, and then that answer should be negative 24. And then I go and find negative 24 somewhere on here and go from there. If I went and looked at number 12, on 12, this one's written a little bit differently. This one goes and says, and I could make it whatever I want, but if I, let's see, I have h, and I have, so if I called this m of x, so if I want to make it look like the other one, that would say, well, that's my function. And it says, once I go and take my derivative, that's what tells me I need to take my derivative, then I go and plug in 1. Now I have the quotient rule. So the quotient rule says, take the derivative of the top, keep the bottom the same. Then minus, now keep the top the same, h squared times the derivative of h of x over h of x squared. Now I want to know what happens when all my x values are 1. So if I go and plug all of my x's, I change all of those to 1s. Well, 2 times 1 is just 2. So I really just have 2 times. And then go and look at what is h of 1. And again, that's going to tell me to go back over here. H is the solid line. And on this one, I don't want my derivative value. I want to know what is that y. So when my x is 1, then my y is 1, 2, 3. So h of 1 is 3. And then minus, that looks like a plus. Then that's going to say minus 1 squared, so 1, times, now it wants to know what is my derivative value at 1, which again is saying what is the slope of this line. So I have to go down 1, 2, 3 over 1. That's going to say that everything on this side, so h prime of x is going to equal -3. So I go back over here and I make that -3. And then divide by h of 1. So h of 1 we said was 3. So 3 squared is going to be 9. So I get 2. Negative times a negative makes that a positive. So that's going to be plus 3 divided by 9. That's going to say that value should be 1. And then again, I go and find out, well, where's 1 with what I need? If I go and look at number 5. Okay, so on 5, again, it's written like that last one up there. That's going to say I have this function right now. This function is 2x times g of x. If that's times, that means I have to go and use my product rule. Product rule says take the derivative of my first function. That's just going to be 2. Keep the second the same. Plus, now keep my 2x, and then the derivative of g of x would be g prime of x. And then again, go back and look at what I have. They want me to plug in x to be 5. So 2 times g of 5 plus 2 times 5 times g of 5. So g of 5, again, says go and look over here. This time I'm using my chart. G of 5 is 8. So 2 times 8 plus 10 times g prime. So now I want the g prime at 5, which that's going to be -5/2. So I get 16 minus 25. That's going to say my answer there is -9. And then again, go and find out where is that. If I go and look at 15, so in 15, this is one of those compositions. It means I'm going to use the chain rule. So if I'm my most outside function, and again, I know I just want to find the derivative because it says d over dx. So my most outside function is the h. So I'm going to say h prime of f of 2x plus 1. I took that derivative. Now it's going to be times. The next letter I see, or the next function I come across, is f. So f prime of 2x plus 1. Then there's still something there. There's still a 2x plus 1. So take that derivative. So that is my derivative. And then it says plug in the value of 2. So if I go and I plug in the value of 2, well, that's going to be 2 times 2. 2 times 2, that's going to be 4. 4 plus 1 is going to be 5. Times f prime of, if I plug in 2, again, that's still going to be 5. And then times 2. So this, f prime of 5, that's on my chart. Again, go over here and say f prime of 5 would be 1/3. So I have 1/3 times 2. Then this is where I have to go and say, well, what is f of 5? Well, f of 5 is 1. So this is asking me for what is my derivative value at 1. And again, this one goes and says use this part, which says, well, here's 1. If I'm using h, that's that slope of -3. So I have -3 times 1/3 times -2. And that's going to end up being -2. I hope that helps out. Try and figure out where some things are going to go. Remember, these are just those basic rules that we had. If I have 2 functions or 3 functions, there's a plus sign in the middle. Just take the derivatives of each of those and then look for where they fit over here. If I have, what else do I have? If I have the quotient rule, remember to take the derivative of the top times keep the bottom the same minus keep the top the same, derivative of the bottom, all over the bottom squared. I also have the product rule, which is really just the top part of the quotient. Just make sure it's plus. So derivative of the first times keep the second plus keep the first, derivative of the second, plug them in, see what you get. And then if I have a composition, means I'm using the chain rule. Derivative of your most outside function and keep on going until there's nothing else to take the derivative of. I hope that helps sort of get us started on some of these if we were stuck. And I hope you guys are doing okay, having a great day. Oh, also, if it says, like, on this last one, if it says, what is the slope? Guess what that means? finding the derivative. Okay, so make sure that on all of these, it's talking about finding the derivative. Sometimes it'll go and tell you using function notation that they want you to then use the x value of 1 or 5 or whatever, or it might use it like this. Okay, but those two mean the same thing. Okay, whichever way that they're written. Or if it says, what's the slope? Okay, if you need anything else, just let me know. Hope you guys are doing okay. Have a great rest of your day.